Celtics did what they were supposed to do in Charlotte. Sam Hauser was awesome. Jayson Tatum was awesome. Kristaps Porzingis was awesome. And this road trip was a successful one. I'll explain it all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season, drop Drew in the mix. And 3 from KP, no we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Juice, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in Locked On after. Karalis on the breakdown, clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic, documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how we started, raising business, how we finished. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I've got you covered every day, Monday through Friday. And hey, lately, it's been every day, all day, because they've been playing on weekends and whatnot, so I got bonus podcasts for you when they do that. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, however you're listening to this, or however you're watching this, perhaps here on YouTube. Get into the comment section. Let me know what you think. My name's John Karalis. If you're new to the show, I used to play ball a long time ago. Now I'm a beat writer covering the Boston Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. So make sure you're checking my work out there. Today, we're talking about the Boston Celtics beating the Charlotte Hornets by 14. It's their 19th double-digit win on the road this season. It ties a team record. It ties an NBA record, actually. So pretty good. Celtics pretty good on the road. I'll talk about them having a successful road trip coming up later on. I'll talk about specifically the guys who were big. Jayson Tatum. I thought a really good game from Tatum for a variety of reasons, and not for some of the reasons maybe that we expected. Porzingis, Hauser, all of that stuff. And let's just start with them staying the course. And by staying the course, I mean the Hornets came in and scored 32 in the first quarter. They were attacking the paint. The Celtics' point of attack defense was not great. Kind of a similar story to some of what we saw in Atlanta, with a little bit of a different result, a little bit of a different twist. Point of attack defense wasn't good. Guys were getting blown by, and then the help comes over. And depending on how the offense then reacts, in Atlanta, we saw them shoot, and the help resulted in offensive rebounds being allowed because the guy who was the initial point of the attack on defense didn't swing back and put in that extra effort to go box out or impede somebody's progress and get that rebound. In this one, the help came over, and it was a lot of dump offs and alley-oops early on. So that it's similar mistakes, different results. But the Celtics stuck with it, right? They didn't overreact. They tend not to. And then defensively they put up they held Charlotte to 21, 26, and 25. And Joe Mazzulla's stated goal is 25-point quarters. Each 25-point quarter that you give up increases your odds of winning. So they did it twice and almost the third time. So sticking with it and flipping the points in the paint, where Boston in the first half lost that 34-18. In the second half, 26-14 Boston. So it ends up flipping around. They shut off the paint, and basically that's better defense. That's better rebound. That's better point of attack. That's a little bit of a correction. Some make-miss stuff happening here. There's a lot more make-miss stuff that happens in some of these games that we tend to kind of give credence to. And so there was definitely some of that. I think one mistake that we make, just speaking generally here, is that when something is happening that's a little bit more of an outlier than we think, like when the Celtics are shooting great and they're shooting like 50% from three, or even like one of those 60% from three, we expect that to kind of temper off a little bit. We never expect the other team to have its version of that. And when they do, it's always Boston's fault. We never really say, well, look, the other team also was just making a bunch, and Boston has to weather that storm. And I think there was some of that going on in this road trip for sure. And I think some of that was happening in the first quarter. It's just some shots, the Hornets came out and shot 60 some odd percent in the first quarter, just overall. And so I just feel like the defense, some of that had to temper off a little bit. And when the defense finally stepped up, the Celtics ended up holding Charlotte to 45% overall. So that was part of what happened there. This is exactly kind of how the game was supposed to go, right? This is how a Celtics team is supposed to beat the Hornets, right? You get some guys who had good games. Like Grant Williams had a good overall game, right? 23.7 rebounds for Grant. In a game where they lost by 14, he was a 0 in the plus minus. So that he wasn't part of the losing part, I guess. But he hit some shots. He hit a couple of 3-pointers, hit a couple of floaters. He hit some tough shots. Got in there. Had a couple of assists. He played a pretty good game. You say, okay, well that's a better game than expected from Grant Williams. Bridges has a hot start. You kind of cut his water off. He just missed a triple-double, but he was really good early and not as impactful later on. And, you get some Brandon Miller hitting a couple of shots early, and then he wasn't as big a factor. So this is how it's supposed to go. The Celtics just, all right, you ride that out. At some point, some of these guys are going to get hot. And one of the things I loved about this game from a Boston perspective is that no one forced things. It was okay, this stretch of the game belongs to Derrick White. This stretch of the game belongs to Al Horford. Jayson Tatum has, he was more of a constant, but there was the Kristaps Porzingis stretch. There was the Sam Hauser stretch. In fact, let's get into that because this all falls under going with what works and why I love that so much. So we'll get into that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, BetterHelp is therapy that's flexible. It's all online. It's designed to be suited to your schedule. And this is why I think this is a good start for you if you've been considering therapy. I have benefited from therapy. I have gone. It's something that I'm really trying to make a constant in my life because you never know if you just want to get something off your chest, because holding stuff in is how things build up, and that causes a problem. And you can't have that in you. So you've got to let it out. And talking to somebody, a licensed therapist, is a great way to let that out. And it's just some self-care, whether you're trying to deal with something deep or deal with something more surface level. It's all self-care, and it's all very important. You don't have to worry about finding somebody whose office is next to you, and you don't have to worry about sticking with that person longer than you think because there's no one else that you can find. Because BetterHelp is all online, you can fill out a questionnaire at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Fill out your questionnaire, then you get matched with a licensed therapist. If you don't click, you switch. No extra charge, no nothing. So that's important. You can keep going until you find the right match. And once you find that right match, therapy can be really, really helpful. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. You get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports today. It's the only 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can turn off all those other sports networks that just yell at each other and have fake arguments. That's no fun. Get real discussions, real information from the Locked On local experts. I'm one of them. I'm on there. This show is on there every once in a while, so make sure you're checking it out. It's also on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. So as I was saying, the Celtics in their 14-point win rolled with what worked. And in a game with no Jaylen Brown. Hopefully that hand is not serious. He said he was going to go get it checked out after the Pelicans game. He said he was going to go get it checked out when they get back to Boston. We're going to see. The next game is against OKC, so they'll be home. We'll see. Hopefully there's some update somehow soon. But without Jaylen Brown, Tatum's out there. He's in North Carolina. Duke guy, going back to North Carolina. He loves playing there. He said after the game he loves playing there. Knows a lot of people there. Still has a lot of connections there. So, of course, he wants to play well there. He always does play well there. And you'd think, like, okay, I can excuse Tatum if he goes for his own a little bit. But he really didn't do that. I think there are I can think of 2, maybe, possessions where he really just said, I am forcing this. I'm going against this mismatch. No, whatever. Everybody out of my way. And one of them turned into a turnover. So that's kind of like a karma. But I think Tatum generally played very, very well. 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, a block. He had those 4 turnovers. But he shot pretty well. 4 of 10 from 3, 9 of 19 overall. So just almost 48%. You make one more shot, you're shooting over 50%. So a good night and kind of picked his spots. Aside from like those couple of possessions, he just played the game the way it was supposed to be played. It was very, very good. Early on, Derrick White gets going, hits a couple of threes, keeping the Celtics afloat and just playing well enough for the next thing to happen, right? So the Hornets were packing the paint. They were daring the Celtics to drive. They wanted the Celtics to drive. The Celtics made the right reads. They started kicking it out to 3. They took a bunch of 3-pointers in this one, 53 3-pointers. But the defense was geared towards stopping things at the rim. They wanted to funnel the Celtics into the paint to the rim because they had a lot of bodies there. And so the plan was, let's see if we can draw them in. And still the Celtics, when they did get into the paint, were effective. Jayson Tatum had a couple of nice drives and dunks. They found their way to the rim anyway. They found seams because, the Hornets aren't that good. Even if they have a plan, sometimes you don't execute the plan. So the Celtics did a pretty good job overall. And so early on, Derrick White hitting from 3 was very effective, but he finished with 19 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, a couple of offensive rebounds in there. They had Drew Holiday. No, Holiday had a bad game. Sorry. They had Kristaps Porzingis in the fourth quarter, especially going to those post-ups. Was, I think, the third quarter where he was really going into the post-ups. 3 of 4. He had an 11-point third quarter, 4-4 from the line, a bunch of and ones. He was very good at he does a great job at that big swooping kind of like when he rises up to shoot in the paint. He always does that big swooping kind of thing, and he is able to usually draw the foul on those. And because he's got enough strength in his hands, and his hands are big enough to, when he gets hit on the arms, he doesn't lose control. He can get that ball up, kind of uses that left hand to take the contact, most of the contact, and then the right hand rises up to shoot. It's a very smart way to do it. And he does it a lot when he turns into that left over his left shoulder, swooping around. The offhand takes the contact, and you rise up with the shooting hand. Less disruptive, easier to get that ball up onto the rim and have it fall softly on the rim. You saw a couple kind of just bounce there and fall in. That's a very effective. That's the most effective Kristaps Porzingis that you're going to get. So he took a turn. The Celtics didn't force any particular thing. They didn't force and say, we're only going to this. We're only going to Tatum. Then in the fourth quarter, Sam Hauser gets going. And they fed him 4 of 7 from 3 in the fourth quarter. He hit 7 of 10 overall, but he had a 12-point fourth quarter to kind of put this thing away. And that was his turn there, right? Jayson Tatum only got 2 shots in the fourth quarter. Didn't need to take any shots in the fourth quarter. Derrick White gets in and, chips in with a couple of makes. He's the only other Celtic to hit more than 1 in the fourth quarter. So it was Hauser's turn. And that's where the Celtics are just completely at their best, because they got 6 assists on 9 baskets in the fourth. Hauser did a great job of making himself available, taking the one shot he hit in the corner, just running straight down. Great footwork. He gets himself, his balance is so great. It's his progression from his rookie year to now has been really amazing. His balance, his shot is released a little bit more, a little bit quicker. He's able to get that footwork down, so his balance maintains itself throughout his shot. Even when he's streaking down the sideline, he's very good at controlling his speed. It's incredible to see him when he's got it going like this. And the shots weren't just falling. Those shots were absolutely perfect. I mean, he was barely touching the net, never mind the rim. It's going to be interesting. Like Tom Westerholm and I talked about, it was like a week ago or so, or maybe a little bit longer at this point. He makes a strong case for playoff minutes, and there might only be 20, 25 minutes to be had in any particular game. Hopefully the first round allows the Celtics a little bit of time to, maybe Tatum and Brown can sit and you play 38 minutes instead of 42. And those extra 4 minutes can go to Hauser and Pritchard, who played really well. He didn't shoot entirely great, but I thought Pritchard did a really good job overall, just being a positive influence there. 5 assists. He and Porzingis and Derrick White all had 5 assists. 28 assists overall for the Celtics. Just a good business-like. This is exactly what you want a team to do. They didn't let up. They didn't give up their lead. They didn't force anything. They played with good pace. They did all of that stuff. So overall, a nice win and a nice end to the road trip. And I think when it's all said and done, when you look at everything, Celtics 4-2 on the road trip. When you look at how the rest of the league played over those 6 games, that same stretch, I think it was a successful road trip. In fact, I got the numbers. I got to look. I think the perspective might soften some people's opinions. Maybe not, because this is the internet, but I think this will soften some people's opinions. And just give you that perspective of this was a successful road trip. We'll talk about that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, so you can get your tickets for Red Sox games if you're in Boston or whatever. You can get MLB tickets. You can get tickets to just about anything on Game Time. If they're selling tickets to theater, comedy shows, all of that stuff, you can go check out the tickets on the Game Time app. Go check out your Red Sox tickets. Go check it all out. They've got last minute deals, so you can save up to 60% off buying tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all that stuff. Flash deals let you save in more with exclusive in-app deals and select seats ahead of the game. All in pricing shows you the total up front, so there's no surprise fees at the checkout. And you can get a panoramic view from your seat with the seat view, so you can see exactly what you're getting at. They've got the lowest price guarantee, which credits you 110% of the difference if you find that same ticket in the same section for less. So go check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On NBA, locked LOCKED on NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA. It's me. It's Jake Madison on Wednesdays. So make sure you're checking it out. Rotating hosts all week long. It's a good show. It's fun. Covers the whole league. We talk about big picture stuff. Maybe tomorrow we'll be talking about, or Wednesday we'll be talking about the return of Joel Embiid. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So the Celtics 4-2 on this road trip. The 2 losses in Atlanta, people losing their minds over those losses. I have been called every name in the book, in the YouTube comments, in the Boston Sports Journal comments, because I've been trying to say, not the biggest deal in the world. Don't worry about it. It's not the hugest, some of it was frustrating. I get it, but it's not so bad. People cannot handle it. And I know it's the internet, and I know it's the worst of people comes out, and they really, really cannot handle some of these losses. But I think when you look at the big picture, so this was actually a good road trip. Perfect road trip? No, obviously not. I wouldn't even say it was a great road trip. It was good. It was successful. It was a successful road trip. First things first, they start this road trip 11 games ahead of Milwaukee in the loss column and 6 games ahead of OKC in the loss column. They finish the trip 11 games ahead of Milwaukee in the loss column and 6 games ahead of OKC in the loss column. So they finished exactly where they started in the standings. They didn't lose ground. OKC isn't making things interesting for the top overall seed. Milwaukee isn't making some charge where you say, oh man, if they only had a little bit more time, they would have closed the gap. No. Celtics, you talk about them not losing leads. This is the lead. Like they had this big lead here in the East and in the NBA, and they haven't lost it. In fact, Celtics play OKC Wednesday night, and the winner, if the Celtics win that game, they lock up the top overall seed. So that game right there will do it. So from that perspective, totally fine. Celtics are totally fine. They didn't lose any ground. They're right where they started. That's exactly what you want, right? They finished the season in this exact same spot, and they've done their job, right? So here they are. The play, all of the stuff that I said about the Atlanta losses. They had one of the games, they blew it, right? They let go of the rope way too early, and it was frustrating as all hell, but not the biggest deal in the world. The second game, DeJounte Murray goes absolute, bonkers. 44 points, 44 shots, yes, but like late in the game, he really took over down the stretch and hit some tough shots. Shots that maybe he doesn't hit at that same clip, but he's on a heater. He won Player of the Week. So, and he won Player of the Week because of how he played all 5 games, all 6, whatever games he played, not just the Boston games. So DeJounte Murray's been on a little bit of a heater. So he stayed on one against the Celtics, torched them down the stretch. Hey, that's, again, frustrating, but it happens. But if you look at the overall picture here, the Celtics, over the course of the road trip, number 1 offense in those 6 games. Number 1 offense, 4th best net rating, right? Better net rating than Minnesota, Denver, Milwaukee, OKC, and the Clippers in order. The only teams better than Boston in net rating, which is the difference between your offensive rating and your defensive rating. Over a course of 100 possessions, how many points you score versus how much you give up. Only Dallas, New York, and Miami were better in terms of net rating in that 6 game, over the span of those 6 games, the road trip. So Boston still out there, one of the best teams in the league, still on that road trip, right? You look at the numbers overall and you say, okay, the number's actually pretty good. Now, the defense was not great, 18th overall. So, like I said, it was not a great road trip. Opponent shot 49%. They normally give up 45%. So 4% better. So again, defense could be better. And a lot of those points there, or points in the paint, putbacks, stuff like that. That really pumps up the numbers. So the Celtics defense, rebounding, not the best. And I think Joe Mazzulla makes the argument that the defense, the first shot defense, was good. And they break it up like that in weird ways. So they did a good job up until the first shot. They defended the first shot well. And then after that, it wasn't great, which is the rebounding, right? So Joe Mazzulla will argue first shot defense was good. So everything up until the shot was great. And then after that, they fell apart a little bit. So why do you break it up like that? Because that says, well, what do you need to work on? If your first shot defense is good, then you just say, okay, clean up the rebounding and you'll be fine. So, okay, fine. Look at the mistakes that they made on this trip, right? And they were basically the two Atlanta games. Well, they had the lead, a big lead against Atlanta, and they blew it. Well, they didn't after that. When they had a lead against New Orleans, they didn't blow it. When they had a lead against Charlotte, they didn't blow it, right? The Pelicans cut into the lead a little bit because good teams are going to cut into leads a little bit, but they didn't blow it. So that's one big thing. The Celtics didn't play down to the competition, right? You can say, well, in Atlanta, they played down. Okay. They didn't do it against Charlotte. They came out. Charlotte was hot early, but the Celtics took off and built the lead. It was up into the 20s, and they held on. No real problems. Very business-like win. So that was corrected. You say, well, they went to Tatum too much in Atlanta, that first game especially. They ground things to a halt, and they went to Tatum too many times, just Tatum ISO, Tatum ISO, Tatum ISO. Okay, yes, that's true. I complained about that after the game too. So what do? In that second game, they run the Tatum, ISO at the end of regulation, but then they go to the other Porzingis post up in overtime. They went to something different. In New Orleans, they went to the Derrick White, Kristaps Porzingis actions down the stretch. They didn't go to just Tatum here, work down the clock and just you shoot all the shots. So in their next games after that, they corrected those things, right? So the little things that you saw in Atlanta, you say that those are the mistakes that they make, way too often. Well, they corrected them as the road trip kind of went on. You didn't go to just Tatum against Charlotte. You went with what worked. It was kind of just throttling by committee. And when Charlotte adjusted to one thing, Boston went to another and hit them over the head with that until that didn't work anymore. And then they went to the next thing. So you can look at the mistakes that they made and say, by the end of the road trip, they were doing some of those things differently. So again, not a perfect trip by any means, not even a great trip by any means, but they did the things they were supposed to do. 4-2 in the trip, 8-2 in their last 10. Only Houston and Dallas are better than Boston in their last 10. Celtics are better than Denver, OKC, Minnesota, Milwaukee, all of that in their last 10. Milwaukee has a loss to the Lakers without LeBron. OKC lost to the Rockets. Minnesota lost to Chicago. Other teams that the Celtics are being compared to all have losses, and some of them aren't the greatest losses either. So perspective shows you that Boston did okay. The teams that are chasing them, trying to make some sort of statement, didn't do any better. And the Celtics come home with their 59th win and one game here out of their next 7 left to, if they win this one game, they lock up the top overall seed in the NBA. And then it's basically get us to the playoffs, get to the playoffs healthy and whatever. That's it. So I say all of that so people can be like, okay, take a breath, take a step back. This was a successful road trip. Could it have been a 6-0 road trip? Sure. but these trips don't normally go that way. And that trip started a long time ago. This is now so they're going to land in Boston on April 2nd. Their trip started, they left on March 21st. So that's that's a long time to be away, man. That's almost 2 full weeks. Like, to be on the road away from your family for that long, that's a grind. So I don't know. I think successful trip. I'm fine with it. If you're still worked up about it, have a drink, relax. It's not that bad. Celtics are the best team in the NBA still. And I think that they get it. I think they understand. I think they understand what they're supposed to be doing. So the next couple of weeks are going to be kind of like a little bit of a mental challenge, but they're going to have to go out there and kind of use these games as practices. It's kind of where they're going to land. These are basically glorified practices. So I'm not even looking at the results anymore. I'm looking at the OKC result. I want to see Boston come in, play OKC like a real team. They're going to have to play, I think, Milwaukee like a real game because it's a national TV game. And they're going to have to ramp up and start like really getting prepared for the playoffs. But other than that, I'm not even looking for wins and losses anymore. They don't matter at all. It's health, it's cohesiveness, it's working on things, it's glorified practices until they get themselves into the playoffs and can prepare for somebody specific. That's all it is. But of course, they're going to lose some of these games and people are going to lose their minds. And I'll be here to have people call me names in the comments, whatever. Go ahead. If it makes you feel better, whatever. So just subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you can listen all the time, however you're listening. Appreciate you all for doing so. Get into the comment section of the YouTube page. Ring the bell there. Get notified when I drop new videos. And I would love it if you shared the podcast. Spread the word. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast. Is right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Boston Celtics, every day.